Ladies and gentlemen, you already know what today's video is about. The update on the VT600, well, I got a new controller. Now, for the people who didn't see the last couple of videos, having this phase current overflow, at first, for several months, I thought maybe it was just a bad tune. Well, it was obvious it was more than just a bad tune. So once I realized, well, damn, I'm gonna have to spend a good chunk of money again and replace either the motor or the controller. I made my theories, and I don't know, man. The theories with the motor, the theories with the controller outweighed the theories with the motor like crazy. The only one I had on the motor was the noise it was making, and some people say it could be a fractured magnet, but I'm thinking a fractured magnet would have caused something catastrophic, right? Especially if I'm constantly doing 70 miles per hour. I've had my times where I've done 90 on this bike. So it can't be a fractured magnet. Some people said a broken bearing. Well, that wouldn't cause a phase current overflow. That's just a bad bearing. But the controller had plenty of problems that I'm not gonna mention right now.
Actually, I decided that I'm gonna repeat myself again and talk about those problems, but we'll talk about them later in this video.
Today's video is about this controller. But before we go and trying to install this controller, let's take it to the table and see what comes in the box. Now, the reason I want to take it to the table and see what's in the box, because I didn't just go get this controller from AliExpress, because I'll probably get scammed again. I got this controller from econiccycles.com, an American distributor right out of Kentucky. And this controller comes with some extra things that are a bit useful, at least one extra thing that'll be useful for me. I'm already liking that I'm seeing the official Far Driver box. We always love high quality packaging, good packaging. Econic Cycles, ladies and gentlemen.
And there it is, ladies and gentlemen. Now, this is where I want to get into the details about this controller, because it is not your typical ND96 1800. This controller is the 96 1800 HR. It is the high performance version, it's the race version. So unlike the regular one that does 800 battery amps and 1500 motor amps, this one does 1350 battery amps and 1800 motor amps. Now that one's a little extra because my bobber battery can only do so much. It can't hit the thousands. But the one extra thing this controller does have that makes things a little more useful than the setup I had to use on my old controller, and that is the built-in water block. So water cooling should be even better than it was with my old controller. And that is very useful. Now, I know I'm doing a little bit of chit-chat about this Econic Cycles. No, I'm not sponsored. It's just that if it wasn't for Econic Cycles, I would have to risk getting another controller from AliExpress, where I just got my controller and got a dud. And not only that, I'm not going to go into too much detail right now. I'll save that also for later. But they really helped me out with getting this controller. Certain things happen, but certain things they did that makes me trust in their company even more. But now that we got the controller out the box, now that we know what it looks like and what extra specs it is packing, it's now time to get off the table, get back outside, and put the new controller in the bobber and see if this controller will be the saving grace.
Well, actually, not yet. We got to get the old one out first. These are pretty tight on, so I'm not sure how difficult or easy this may be. All right, it wasn't that difficult. There we go.
Hold up, not so fast. That's a completely different battery connector. Is there something we're missing? Yeah, there's a little something I didn't show you. This is where I'm going to get into why I didn't upload last week. Due to what? Build frustrations, I guess. Long story short, let's just say getting my old controller out and flinging a bunch of coolant all over the place, there's a possibility that I got coolant on the male side positive connector. So when hooking the controller up and plugging it in, I accidentally paused the recording, but this is pretty much what happened. Yes, it happened twice. Oh,
I'm gonna fucking lose it.
so the first time was obviously the coolant due to the corrosion in the wires when I chopped it off. The second time, on the other hand, long story short, if you're building a battery of this magnitude, you know, the size of the ridiculous battery I have in this bobber, a QS10 connector might not be the connector you want to go with due to that little resistor not being strong enough to handle the volts coming from my battery and the current coming from the even stronger capacitors in this new controller. That will cause too much plugging in and out because I plugged this connector 3 times in a row because I was trying to test some things. It'll cause the resistor to pop. Therefore, the connector is kind of now useless. So I had to install this new connector, and that delayed me a complete week out of testing. So this video should have happened a week ago. But due to this, it didn't. Oh yeah, and that red connector was supposed to be the one I was going to get, but it didn't come overnight like I was supposed to. It came overnight the next day, so it delayed me another day, which came at the same time the gray one did. So I'm like, let me just go with the gray one. It's bigger. Overkill is never too much when you have a bike like this. And the gray one was a real legit Anderson connector where the red one was a knockoff. I thought both were going to be knockoffs. But just a bit of extra, not to waste too much more time. I'm kind of glad I went with the Anderson connector anyways because it's a much bigger connector, much more solid connector. The QS10 is round, but it's hollow. So it's not as solid as you think it is, therefore I doubt it's handling current as good. And because I don't have a very strong or expensive soldering iron, I can't properly melt the solder throughout the entire thick 2-gauge wire onto the QS10, as where the Anderson is a nice, snug crimp. It's not going anywhere, so it's a guaranteed solid connection. Where again, the QS10, I can't solder it that good. So its connection was never properly solid. It was really connected by a little bit of wires that were soldered on. I tried to solder over the top for that sort of connection. For all I know, it was causing a bit of inefficiency, if I'm saying that correctly. And I doubt it would have really did much, but for all you know, I could get a little more efficient current coming through the battery. Maybe a little less heat. And I mean, just look at it. It's huge. I thought the QS10 was huge. Now this connector is huge. Let's do a size comparison.
These are fucking huge. They don't look too much thicker, but my god, these are huge. Look at the terminals. Oh my god. That's a QS10 with some wires on it. And that's a QS8. This is a GoPro. To make the comparison easy, I'm gonna compare it to something that everybody should have. A Glock, a penny. Look how dumb that is.
Alright, that's enough messing around. Good thing I got tabs in the video, you know, for the TikTok brains out there, the people that got the 10-second attention spans. I'm kidding, really. I'm pretty sure those people didn't make it past the intro. But we got everything hooked up, we got the new connector, we got solid connections, all those other problems and delays are out the way. But just before I hit the road, there's a very important, simple test that I want to do that's honestly going to make me really confident if I get the results or hear the results that I really want to hear. Y'all probably know where I'm going with this.
I want to show you all these settings, and I want to do this test one more time to see if it sounds the same or if it's going to start sounding nasty again. First, I want to show y'all. So your original settings would typically be just like this, the PID parameters. Okay, your PID parameters will be just like this. I'm too high. So you got AN 16, LM 22, start KI, make KI, and max KI at 4, 8, and 12, speed KI 9, speed KP 10, and all these KP settings, these 3 that you can't touch. With the old controller, it sounded like this. Really nasty. But once I put all start, mid, and max KIs at 111 and speed KP down from 5 to 0, I will kind of go between the two. It sounded like this. After hooking up the big battery before the second QS10 connector popped, it started sounding better at these settings. So here's the settings again. These are exactly what they are at. And these were at 111 in order to sound good on the old controller.
Now, I forgot to say this, but your KI settings being at 4812, KI speed being at 9, and KP being at 10 with the other 3 settings you can't touch, those are the stock settings. Your controller, your far driver controller should come with those settings like that. And the fact that the new controller sounds this much better than the old controller at those same stock settings is already giving me like a whole bunch of confidence at the fact that it possibly was the old controller. Now, I want to do a sound comparison with the old controller being the custom settings of 111 and KP, speed KP being at 5 or 0. They sound about the same at either or. But I want to compare that to the new controller being a stock setting because I don't know if it's just me. I feel like the new controller still sounds cleaner. Let's give it a test. Now y'all let me know, does that sound better? To me, the new controller sounds cleaner, clearer. The old one with the 111 sounds like something was still kind of rubbing. But now that the first little initial test is out the way and it's got me feeling a little more confident, let's put the helmet on, hop on the bike, and let me tell y'all what the test consists of, at least what I've been doing for the last 4 months, so y'all can understand what exactly I'm doing and why I'm doing it.
So here's how testing goes. At least that's how I've been doing it for the last 4 months. So I start right here. Always cuts off in no matter what gear. So I do my testing in gear 1 since I'm still not quite used to gear 2 or 3 power. Now in gear 1, I sit here right on my road, get my feet up on the bike, and then pretty much no power, and I hit it. Hold it for a minute, let go. I go up, turn around, slow down, no power, no throttle, and I go back down. Let go, and that's it. And I do that 8 times. So I just did it twice. I'm gonna do it 6 more times, and it's about as simple as that. As long as I hit it like I just did, it'll cut off. And when it didn't cut off and I thought it was good, which is why I'm doing it for a week straight, it worked good for 2-3 days, but on the 3rd or 4th day, cuts off again, and it kills all hope in fixing what you thought was fixed. And then after I do those up and down, that's when I go on the open road and I test mid-range torque, because I've had this on eco throttle where it wouldn't give me all power as soon as I mashed the throttle. It would slowly and then go. So the eco throttle level of like 6, but then it would cut off during mid-range where I'm already doing 30-40 miles per hour, and then I hit it again, it'll cut off there. So I go out on the open roads to do mid-range torque and make sure it won't cut off while I'm already doing some speed. And then that's it. That's all that needs to be done. Now on the last day, the last week, the last test, the 7th day, I want to do a rangey test where I drive for at least 15 to 20 miles and see if it cuts off. So that's doing an average of 45, 50, you know, my typical traffic. Stay on some empty roads in case this does cut again. I don't want to have to stop while in the middle of the traffic. That'll be dangerous. But as I'm doing that, I just want to do some miles and some speed. So as the bike gets a little hotter, voltage gets a little lower, power is being constantly used, can it still go normally? Because this thing doesn't get that hot, but can it still go? Will it still act normal, or is that problem still somewhere within this bike, which would mean, is it somewhere within the motor, or is it completely gone? So now that I think I've properly explained the testing, if I have any important information I want to say throughout the week, I'll throw some clips in. But if not, I'll see y'all next week for that last test.
So after a long 6 days of testing, from acceleration test to mid-range torque to even on certain days do a bit of extra testing like driving a little longer or testing twice a day. And then after I do all these tests, I go down and see what the controller temps are looking like, And yes, they do say in the app, but just for a little more accuracy. And then see what the motor is saying when it comes to temperatures. And all this testing is being done, mind you, on one charge. Starting at a charge of 114 volts, so starting pretty high, but ending off at about 103 volts, which is somewhere around 55-ish%. This now leads to the last day of testing. As it is now the 7th day, will we find our culprit? Let's find out.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is day 7. It has officially been a week. We are now on the last day. It is Thursday. We are fully charged. Now I was going to at first do, the typical up and down, because that's important, and then the mid-range torque and just drive 15-20 miles. I realized that's not really necessary because I've already kind of been doing that for a week straight. So I don't really need to do a range test. And trust me, like I said, I've been dealing with this issue for 4 months. So all this up and down accelerating, and it doesn't cut out there, so I go on the road. If it wouldn't have cut, it would have been cut out on me. So because it hasn't cut on the lower voltage range is exactly why today on the last test I did the full charge. Because usually what would happen is I get excited, I think it's working, 3 days in, charge it, 4th day on a full charge, cuts out. Instantly reminds me, nope, we're still here. And it would quickly remind me when the bike's fully charged. So today's test is going to consist of the same old. And if nothing goes wrong, I want to talk about it a little more, so that might be where I drive for a little longer. But let's get this out the way. This is the moment of truth, literally the moment of truth. I'm gonna be a little more careful because it's gonna have some more power. That's one. I already feel good because usually it will cut off on the first attempt. Not the second, not the third, the first. That's 2. 3. 4. 5. 6. I'm holding this shit a little longer too. I really want to be sure. 7. Last one. Here we go. Last one. I held that shit. So in full acceleration, we're good. There's only one more thing we need to do. And let's go out there and hit the road. It's already flipping into gear 2. Already hitting power. We're chilling. We're good. The screen's gonna turn off on me. Come back. There we go. Woo. That is crazy. Gear 3. I gotta be careful on that part up there because people, of course, don't like to stop. Yeah, slow it down. Gear 3 still. I'm still, might not even be half throttle. That is crazy. I think that was barely 2,000 RPMs too. So, I mean, shit. We're good. That's really the test. Everything else is just because, honestly, it's extra. If I wanted to, I really simply could just stop at those 2 signs and do a UE back down the road.
And why I say I had to repeat myself is because I'm going to be debunking again some theories that I heard that I'm kind of 100% sure you probably heard as well, because that's all I see every time I try to ask the question about this error. And that is number 1. They tell you you're probably running too much battery amps. No, you're not running too much battery amps. They probably also told you your voltage is too high. Your voltage is more likely not too high for the controller. As of a matter of fact, it has nothing to do with your battery. Your battery is not causing the error because phase amps have nothing to do with battery amps. Phase amps is motor amps. Therefore, if your battery was going wrong, your controller wouldn't throw a phase amp error. If anything, your BMS would throw an error, and if it was too bad, your bike would completely shut off because your BMS turned the battery off. The second one I heard is you're probably running too much power for the motor. QS proclaims this and this and that. Well, we all know that QS underrates their motors. So prime example, I'm running a QS80 90H, and QS proclaims that it can only do 8 kilowatts continuous, 20 kilowatts peak. But I know better than that. And And I got this configuration, this motor controller combo, because I saw somebody with the same combo push 70 kilowatts and they did 125 miles per hour in 10 seconds. And like I said before, I get this error in no matter what gear. As you see, I have the red little switch, gear 1, 2, and 3. I get the error even in gear 1, which is only 175 battery amps. So that's 115 volts times 175 amps. That's only 20 kilowatts. So long story short, no, it's not your battery. You're not running too much power for the motor. And it's not a setting problem. You don't have a bad tune. This is far past a tune problem. What is it? Well, it's a faulty controller or motor problem. And it's really as simple as that. The only problem is it may not be that simple for your pockets. But regardless, you want to get your bike back rolling, you're going to have to replace something. So here are the things you're going to want to look out for. Starting off with the motor. Now, if your phase current overflow issue is stemming from your motor, that more likely means you have bad phase windings. And if you have bad phase windings, you're going to absolutely see heat. If you have bad motor windings, you may also see a big drain in your battery power. Usually when the motor is experiencing failure, it'll consume way more energy. So again, you'll see a big excessive energy consumption from your bike. And that one right there is just about confirmed, because just last video when someone was saying they were having the same problem, I asked them a few questions. They said they'll hop back on their bike and do a little bit of testing. They came back to me with some results and they said it seems like their bike is draining way quicker. But not only that, he said the cutouts are happening more frequently and the motor is getting pretty damn hot. And last but not least, if you're having phase winding problems or motor winding problems, you're more likely going to see, or feel, should I say, a lot of vibration. You might also hear some unusual noises. And if you go into your controller, your PID parameters, and your unusual noises are not changing like mine's were with a simple PID parameter change, then you more likely have a bad motor. There's plenty of other reasons or things that could happen if your motor windings are failing. All you gotta do is do a little bit of research on Google and you'll find more results. But those that I named are more likely the main three that you're gonna see from your motor. But in my case, it wasn't my motor, it was my controller. How did I figure that out? Well, after doing a little bit of thinking and creating theories, again, my motor sounded nasty as the clip we heard earlier, but the motor would sound cleaner when I would mess around with my PID parameters. So the thought came to my head, if a simple setting change in the controller can make the motor sound better, how do I know it's not this controller making the motor sound bad? Number 2, doing a little bit of research, I found that usually 9 times out of 10, you are seeing an unbalance in current going through your phase wires because your controller's phase voltage on the terminals are unbalanced. So after finding out this information, I had to do some testing for myself to see if that was the issue that I was dealing with. Long story short, let's say I slap the yellow wire on the yellow terminal like you're supposed to, and it's running the highest. If I then take the yellow wire and slap it on a different terminal, but it's still running the highest out of all the wires, it's the motor. But in my case, every wire that I slapped on the yellow terminal ran the highest. So that was another telltale sign that it's probably my controller. And that there is what made me buy the new controller. Just the amount of theories I had on the controller compared to the one theory that I had on the motor that was pretty much debunked, it made me feel like it has to be the controller, and I can only go based off of theories right now because there's not much information on this error. So that was the risk that I took, and my God, it saved the day. So if you're dealing with any of the possible issues that I stated that you might deal with the motor, you probably need a new motor. But if you're dealing with similar issues that I was dealing with my controller, even to the point that your motor sounds nasty, but you mess around with some PID parameters and now it sounds good, it's probably your controller. And then, ladies and gentlemen, that's how you fix phase current overflow. And just 2 extra things that I noticed with this new controller. The first one being the one that I showed y'all, which was the motor sounding better with the new controller. But the second one that I didn't mention yet, I actually saved for now, is the motor doesn't vibrate quite as much. Because I have my foot pegs directly mounted on my motor, like literally bolted into my motor mounts, I swore the old controller had a tidbit more vibration in it as I would drive, where the new controller doesn't make the motor vibrate as much. It feels a little smoother. And that just makes me feel like I'm getting quite a bit more efficiency out of my motor with this new controller being hooked up. But I think everything that I was saying while I was driving that I wanted to properly get out, I think I got it all out. I think I said everything that needed to be said. But I'm not done yet. Because ladies and gentlemen, I'm back. I'm back again. Finally, I should be able to give y'all the content that I've been trying to give y'all 4 months ago. With no more delays, errors, and hiccups, I can finally get back on the road with this bike. There's a few things that have been happening behind the scenes that I was supposed to get some content on a long while ago, but I should be able to do that now. There's a few changes that has been made where certain content could be returning. And there's going to be a few things happening in the future, actually probably around the end of this month and I think the end of October, that I should now be able to take part of, at least with this bike. And I say with this bike because remember in my last video, the motor review, how I was talking about I was having 2 problems. This one being a problem, which was this bike, and another one being a delay. Well, that delay for the small project that I've been hinting at, that one item that I need to get this project going, that one item that I've been waiting for, has finally shipped out. As a matter of fact, it is in the hands of the shipping service. So finally, I should really get some proper and good content going real soon.
Hey, look at the little Surron. All right, now one thing I want to say right now about this bike before I get into the last thing I want to say about it is, remember in the group ride where I had my JBL speaker up here? It was quite ugly. It was annoying me, I'm not gonna lie. I didn't like it at all. I really like how clean the handlebars are. I absolutely love the middle position I could put my phone in. This does not bother me whatsoever. I like this a lot. But that being up there was ugly. So I welded this together to put it down here. And I may not be able to hear music that great, but you know what? It's no longer in my goddamn face looking ugly as hell on my handlebars. But now truly the last thing that needs to be mentioned, now that we're finally done with this problem, it's gone, the new controller is great, it works. It's time we start slapping the panels on. But of course, before we can slap the panels on, I gotta redo the water cooling. I gotta set the tubes up. But you know what? Can't just simply set the plate on. As you can see, this water block is built in. And my old ones will come from the bottom. Well, this being built in, they're gonna have to go through the plate. So I'm gonna need to make a nice little opening so we can actually do that. And this bike is officially ready to get back on the road because it's too hot out here to be running this joint like it's supposed to be air cooled. Way too hot.
But this video is long enough. I'm gonna save that for the next video. If y'all enjoyed this one, make sure you hit like, comment, and hit the subscribe button to get electrified with the rest of the people. Become electric with the rest of the people. Stay tuned for more because we about to get back on the road and I got a few other special things coming up. It has been, and I am out. Peace.